Good morning to everybody in the UK and good afternoon to everybody here in Southeast Asia. My name's Nicole Wharfe. I'm the Business Services Director at the British Chamber of Commerce, and it is a great pleasure to welcome you to this session this afternoon on cybersecurity and trade in both Singapore and the region. We have an absolutely stellar lineup this afternoon, so I'm really extremely excited to welcome in our panel. We have my colleague within the Chamber and Chair of ICT Committee, Magda Chelly. So thank you very much for joining. She will be moderating the session, so there will be plenty of time for you to ask questions during the Q&A element right at the end. So please do submit your questions into the Q&A box, which you will see on the panel at the bottom of your screen. First off, we will also welcome Christopher Yap, who is a great friend of the Chamber here in Singapore. He's the Regional Director for Europe at the London office of the the Singapore Economic Development Board. And then next we'll move to Henry Carver, the First Secretary, hello Henry, First Secretary for Cyber Policy in ASEAN at the FCDO, so the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office in Singapore. And then Linda Schindler. Apologies, Linda. It's great to have you on board. It's the first webinar that Linda's been able to join us for, and it's absolutely fabulous to have you. Linda is the program head for I-71, which is the Innovation Cybersecurity Ecosystem at Block 71, which is a fabulous organization here in Singapore, focusing on support for startups. And then last but by no means least, we have Christabel, who is the Regional IP Business and Trade Advisor for Southeast Asia at the British High Commission in Singapore. Christabel is an absolute font of all knowledge when it comes to IPO and direction on how to position and position yourself here in Singapore and regionally, and also protect yourself as a brand more than anything else. So, before I hand over to Magda, I'm going to give you a bit of context with regards to the British Chamber of Commerce here in Singapore. For some of you, you might be thinking, well, why BritCham? Well, actually, there is good reason that we drive a lot of this trade activity. I will go into a bit more context around the organisation and how we work shortly. But for some background, we are a not-for-profit organisation that was established in 1954, and we very much stay true to our ethos and our core objectives, which is to build networks, connect businesses and create opportunities. We have around about 3,700 individuals that represent around 350 companies, both here in Singapore regionally and also back in the UK. So our organisation here works in that we have two core teams. That's the trade services and membership. And trade services predominantly support the market entry for UK companies into Singapore. And we do this by working with our core partners. So that's the Department for International Trade, whom we are formal delivery partners for here in Singapore. And so we focus on some key sectors and drive those forward in support of the DIT and along with the BCC network regionally and other independent partners. And then obviously we work with these companies to establish and support you and nurture and grow across the region as well as in country, again, by working with other partners. So I'm going to show a very small video, very quick video, just to give you some further context. If it works, it does work. Okay. So just to wrap this up, please do take note of all the support that we can provide for you here at BritCham Singapore. We also have an extremely helpful platform via our website, and we've recently launched our Future of Trade portal, which gives, in addition to the screen in front of you, it gives a whole realm of other information, direct research, white papers, and hot off the press kind of information that's provided via our members. So please do reach out to us. This is one of many trade webinars that we've done quite successfully this year, and the intention really is to give you enough information to get you on your way and hopefully generate interest in both Singapore and the region. So without further ado, I'm actually going to hand over now to our moderator, Magda Chelly, and chair of our ICT committee. Magda, welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Nicole. I'm very glad to be here today to have the opportunity to discuss with you all about various aspects of cybersecurity. And we will have the opportunity to see the different perspective of cybersecurity from different expertise and especially different angles, including privacy, intellectual property, and other regulatory requirements, which I believe will be amazing. So as such, what we will be doing is basically starting with presentations from everyone present in our panel. And we'll be starting by a presentation by Singapore Economic Development Board, Christopher Yap, Regional Director for Europe. Then we will follow the presentation by the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, Henry Carver, to finalize with a presentation by the Innovation Cybersecurity Ecosystem at Block 71 with Nguyen, Schindler, Program Head, followed by presentation by the Intellectual Property Officer, Christabel, Regional IP Business and Trade Advisor for Southeast Asia. And as I mentioned, you can see here that we have this panel that is very rich and will share with you different perspectives. And I think it makes this particular webinar very interesting comparing to the abundance of number of other cybersecurity webinars that we have. So I will not take further time from the first amazing presentation that we will have, and I will leave Christopher Yap to start with his overview and vision. Christopher, over to you, please.
Thank you, Magda. Just checking whether everyone can see this. Yep. All right. Thank you, Magda, and very happy to be here presenting on Singapore and how we view cybersecurity in Asia, as well as some of the potential opportunities that you will find setting up cybersecurity offices and businesses in Singapore. And I'm also very happy to be joined by such a distinguished panel today. I'm very excited to share views and also understand different perspectives. So first off, I'm from the Singapore Economic Development Board. And what is the EDB, right? So we are the lead agency that is in charge of developing Singapore's economy, coming up with the strategy, implementing the strategy, working with companies on projects in Singapore. And we do so really by facilitating investments into Singapore, looking at which are the certain areas in the economy which we need to build up, what are the capabilities, which companies can help us achieve that. And then we work together on different projects, whether it's innovation, whether it's business plan growth, or whether it's just connecting with the ecosystem. We facilitate business operations in Singapore by sharing information on how you can set up your business, how to find the right talent for your company, connecting you to the right ecosystem partners, be it government agencies or even private sector clients. Or lastly, for fantastic projects that we have seen or those that we've never seen before, we're more than inclined to give out some support. How does Singapore look like? Well, for many of you, you would not know that 20% of our GDP is actually in manufacturing. And that is a goal that the Singapore government has set that we will maintain, because manufacturing has many important spin-offs and technical expertise that lends to our economy. The rest of our economy is largely made up of services, whether business services, financial services, or exportable services like logistics, third-party logistics, supply chain, and so on. And for us, I think it's important for me to just spend a little bit more time on this, because I just want to give a bit of a context in terms of why cybersecurity is important for us and how it's important for us. Well, Singapore is a small country. We don't have a lot of people, which means that in terms of the workforce, our numbers are limited. And so our plan for the economy is really to move it towards a digital economy, where digitalization, automation is really the foundation for a lot of businesses who operate here, because that keeps business costs low. It allows us to be efficient and allows us to be productive in everything we do. And as you know, with digitalization comes its own risks. And hence, we view cybersecurity as a key enabler to our digitalization as well as our smart city strategies. So firstly, if you look at the manufacturing sector, we have a great push towards advanced manufacturing, where machines, tools, and everything is connected to the cloud. You can have a lights off factory, and really that's the goal standard for us in manufacturing. We released the Smart Industry Readiness Index 2 years ago, and that's really a benchmark in terms of how companies can reach the advanced manufacturing standards. In terms of cities, we are looking at how, you might have heard, our Smart City initiative, where we are trying to be a smart nation, connecting our infrastructure, whether physical or digital, onto the cloud and making it secure. And so you see with smart cities, with advanced manufacturing, and all the digital enablers within our services, cybersecurity then is really the bedrock for us to operate. I'll just briefly touch on cybersecurity's opportunities in Asia Pacific and Southeast Asia before I move on to why Singapore would be the location of choice for you as you look towards the east to set up your operations. I think we've seen growing market opportunities in Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is the fastest growing market in the world, and a large part of that resides in Southeast Asia, here called ASEAN. We have seen a lot of the countries listed on the graph below having high CAGR rates because of cybersecurity spending. It's not just Singapore that's moving on to the digitalization journey. As we meet as ASEAN, which is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, we talk about cybersecurity plans and also our plans to move our economies towards a digital one. And I think a lot of the Southeast Asia countries are starting to jump onto this, and they're starting to think really deeply in terms of what they need to do to secure their digital futures. So the factors driving ASEAN cybersecurity industry growth, I think firstly, Southeast Asia is one of the fastest growing economic bloc. If you look at the number of populations, actually, Southeast Asia as a bloc as a whole is actually larger than whole of Europe. And if you look at how prevalent digital is to a lot of the countries, I'll just name one example, Indonesia. If we look at their mobile penetration rate, it's more than 100%. That basically means that every person has basically more than one mobile phone. And that means everyone's connected. Everyone's really onto the cloud, whether it's gaming, whether it's working. And I think with COVID-19, a lot of these trends are being accelerated. We also have a growing middle class that's increasingly connected, as I mentioned, and business models that are looking to be disrupt to compete. whether it's in e-mobility, whether it's in ride-sharing, ride-hailing vehicles, etc., or even payments companies. We have huge growth of startups in the region that are really tapping onto disrupting established business models with digital tools. And lastly, ASEAN governments are doubling down on their cybersecurity spend and efforts to really secure the growth of Southeast Asia. Another important factor is regulation. I think we all know that regulation is one of the areas where governments had the opportunity to influence. And we're seeing across Asia a lot of new regulation coming out with and policies coming up with regard to cybersecurity. And all this trickles down to the economy. It trickles down to the end users who start thinking about cybersecurity, and that creates that demand which we've seen in the graph 2 slides before. I think beyond governments, there are also international organizations that are driving cybersecurity growth. For example, the IMO, which looks at maritime globally, has set out guidelines for maritime and shipping companies to look closer at their cyber risk. And that in itself is driving a lot of demand from the shipping industry, which we're seeing in Singapore being a maritime hub towards shipping companies looking at cybersecurity opportunities, looking at cybersecurity for protection of themselves. And Singapore is really leading ASEAN cybersecurity readiness. We launched a $10 million fund for the ASEAN Cyber Capability Program. We're working with our other country partners to looking at how to build up the talent pool, because as we know, talent is key, and yet it's in short supply globally. So our strategy and ambitions really is, number one, to double down on enterprise IT cybersecurity, and number two, to carve a niche in cyber physical security. And I think really on cybersecurity, physical security, is to do with our two-pronged effort, as I mentioned earlier, in advanced manufacturing and also in smart infrastructure. And when you have physical assets tied up into the cloud with sensor data going in and out, being analyzed on the edge and so on, then you come into a different level of complexity, which was not seen 5-7 years before, where you need a greater level of cyber physical security, which is so much more complex than cybersecurity. And within cyber physical security and even cybersecurity itself, we are creating test beds in Singapore for companies to come with new problem statements, to find solutions with technology providers and product owners to develop tester solutions. And where they're successful, we'll partner with them to export these into the region, into the wider world. And I think that's where Singapore, as a small country, really shines, because we're a small country with big dreams and a determined plan. So for us, this is our ambition and our strategy. I'll just go quickly into 5 key reasons explaining Singapore as a cybersecurity hub. But before I do that, I'll just share with you that we are the digital capital of Asia. We have world-class digital infrastructure hosting mission-critical data. More than half of all data centers in Southeast Asia is in Singapore. And I think we also have a large number of submarine cables into Singapore. And hence we host a lot of critical data, a lot of critical digital infrastructure, not just for the region, but for the world. We also have world-class innovation with government support, very established universities and research institutes, and a growing innovation cluster to form co-innovation partnerships within the private sector, the public sector, and our research community to address real-world industry problems. So the 5 reasons why you should consider Singapore as a global cybersecurity hub. Firstly, I think it's clear cybersecurity is our national priority. For us to thrive in the world with a digital economy, a knowledge economy, is really key for us that we view cybersecurity as an enabler for us to, as a platform for us to move up that ladder. Because without which, I think just in 2020 alone, we've seen so many cyber attacks. Marriott International, Canon, even our education sector was hit quite badly when everyone turned to Zoom and different online platforms for e-learning. We saw a lot of disruption there in our education sector as well. We've set up key government agencies to lead the cybersecurity strategy. The Cybersecurity Agency is the key agency for Singapore, but it's supported as well by the EDB, the Infocom Media Development Authority, which is the regulator for all ICT and tech and digital. and also the National Research Foundation, which guides us in terms of how our national research and R&D funds are being spent. We also have a Cybersecurity Act, which mandates that all critical infrastructure is protected against cybersecurity, empowering CSA to manage cyber incidents, and it's also adopting a light touch licensing framework for SOCs. Number 2, Singapore is a vibrant cybersecurity ecosystem. Now, Singapore has about 59 of the world's top 100 cybersecurity companies. So it's really it's a thriving community, it's a thriving ecosystem. We have everything from the startups to local players, to government support, incubators, international organizations, as well as end users, which I think are very important as we move towards a digital manufacturing and so on, to have end users that are willing to try a technology and test them, but knowing as well that there are cybersecurity product companies here, there are MSSPs here, and there's government support as well as the international organization. I think this really creates that vibrant ecosystem for sharing of information, as well as to learn from each other in terms of best practices. Just one example on Palo Alto Networks, I think they have their regional headquarters here. They've expanded the support here, and they have the Cybersecurity Solutions Lab for APAC customers here, developing new products for the region. Another one is Honeywell, which has set up its Cybersecurity Center of Excellence in Singapore. It's the state-of-the-art lab for developing new technologies and products. And they also have a 24/7 SOC. So really, we're looking to anchor the end users of cybersecurity technologies, both from a global and regional perspective. And with that, try to co-innovate and develop new cybersecurity solutions. For us, a small country, is easy to implement, scale, and move fast. If you fail fast, and you learn, you try again. So I think that's really the kind of ethos that we bring to a lot of these conversations. Just the last point on the end users, Citibank is in Singapore with its Global Fusion Center, looking at 24/7 operations to monitor and securitize its financial assets. The third one is really on cybersecurity innovation, which was touched on a little bit before, but just let me go into a little bit more detail. For us, we support innovation as we all know, it's really important to push the cybersecurity agenda. We have set aside $190 million over 5 years, and that's supported by 4 pillars. Our key research infrastructure, nurturing R&D capabilities with various grant calls, with partnering the private sector with our consortium, and also fostering international collaboration, not just with ASEAN, but also with the UN. An example is our Singapore R&D Center of Israel Aerospace Industries, and that's really to spearhead IAI's offering in the field of cybercrime prevention. It's also a founding member of the Cybersecurity Consortium in Singapore. And so we look to bring together the cybersecurity community for innovation networking. And you'll see that we have all these very, very good enablers for you. ICE 71 is one, and I think my colleague on this call, Linda, will be bringing us through that. It's really exciting, pay attention to her. We also have big districts like Punggol Digital District, which is a new precinct coming up in Singapore, which will be a 50-hectare center. And that's where, a lot of the test bits will be happening. And it's also located very near to a university where hopefully there'll be a lot of research collaboration over there. We're trying to bring up the community with bug bounties, black hat events, and so on, and also creating the necessary infrastructure with cybersecurity R&D laboratories to really galvanize and catalyze a lot of this innovation. Fourthly, a commitment is to develop industry-ready talent. As I mentioned earlier, I think we all know how short in supply cybersecurity talent is. So we have developed a long-term plan with our universities, with our polytechnics and the Institute of Education, to bring up cybersecurity as a course that is really growing in importance and is growing in attraction as well. We're not just starting with students who are at the cusp of thinking about what they want to do in life, but what's not mentioned in this slide is that we're also going even before. We're starting in primary school with cybersecurity awareness, and that's where the CSA is working with the MOE to try to see how we can bring up cybersecurity awareness in secondary schools, in the primary schools, just simple exercises like the red team and the blue team, and how this leads to protection, defense, and so on. So I think it's really exciting what we're trying to do. And we're also committed to upskilling cybersecurity talent And this is with companies, whether it's your fresh graduates or even mid-career individuals who are looking to change or switch careers. We have the support there to support them. And lastly, I think we're very keen to work with companies to see how you can build up your own cybersecurity talent, how we can support you by co-sharing some of the costs in terms of developing and training your talent to bring up a new generation of cybersecurity operators, not just level 1 in SOC, but we're hoping to see more in level 2, more in level 3, and also for product companies, more R&D, more innovation talent to create a solution for end users. And lastly, just before I end, I'll talk a little bit about pro-business environment as another reason why Singapore. For us, I think we have the trust of business, we have the trust of governments, and we are secure, innovative, and connected hub. For us, it's something that we pride ourselves very much so, as a place that's easy to do business, but also a place where, as long as there's an interest to come to Singapore, we're very willing to work with you, willing to look at your business plans and advise you in terms of what are the best routes to market. And also IP protection is one of the things that we also pride ourselves for, which I think you'll hear later on, Christabel speaking about IP as well. And so the path to growth for Singapore, I think there are 4 ways that we have thought about this. You can build an R&D team, you can set up a commercial office, innovate, or even look to develop talent. And I think we're looking at advanced managed security services, cyber physical security, threat intelligence, and also on product and solution development for end users, which is interesting for us. Now, before I close, I'd just like to make a few comments, and I think there's 2 points related to how COVID has actually moved us towards a greater focus on cybersecurity. I think the first one is that, I think as Satya Nadella said, we've seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. A lot of factories starting to think about, how do I do things remotely if my workers can't come, or if I need to implement safe distancing within the production line. Secondly, a lot of people working from home. And that means that there are a lot more routes to attack for hackers, lots more areas where everyone's connected to the cloud or SaaS, and different platforms like these just make it easier for penetration to happen and opens up to more vulnerabilities. And lastly, I think smart cities, as we think about, even as Singapore, we're thinking about how do we have more digital utilities. That really leads us into thinking about cybersecurity. So I think these trends are really accelerating the pace of transformation and also accelerating the pace of how vulnerable we are, especially companies that are not protected at the moment. I think the second point I have is that, we can't bring a knife to a gunfight, right? In PwC's 2020 Pulse survey, where they interviewed 93 risk management leaders from chief risk officers, chief information security officers, and chief audit executives, from the Fortune 1000, I think they weighed in, and there's a need to examine technology-enabled resilience, right? While we think and while we accelerate into the future, we need to sharpen our spears or bring our guns. According to Darktrace, AI-driven investigation can reduce time to triage by up to 92%. And I think that really pushes the boundary in terms of what is the future of cybersecurity. And as the DB, I think that is a question on our minds in terms of what is the future of cybersecurity? What's the future of protection for our industries? Because for our industries to thrive and continue to grow, and for Singapore to continue to move up that ladder, it's something that as an enabler, I like to say, we just run in order to stand still. It's something that we need to continue to be ahead of the curve, and we invite all companies to come and think about it. And so bring your problem statements, bring your solutions. We're ready to test it, commercialize, look to export solutions to the region. And if you have thought about something or have a business plan, just feel free to get in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christopher, for an amazing presentation. I can honestly share with everyone that I have been through a different part of this ecosystem in Singapore after living in 5 other countries, and absolutely amazing opportunities are here, not only within the vibrant ecosystem for big companies to build their capabilities here, but as well for startups. And as Christopher mentioned, Linda will share with us a lot more about that. But before moving forward, we will now give the opportunity for Henry Carver, First Secretary Cyber Policy for ASEAN, to share with us a little bit further about his perspective. Henry, over to you.
Can everyone see the slides first? Just give me a thumbs up. Yep, all good, brilliant. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I don't get to talk to businesses very much these days. I am, as I said, I'm the first political cyber in ASEAN. But my previous job, I used to be 2 years in cybersecurity and DIT. I did work on the EU NIST directive. I spent many years in government doing cybersecurity issues, talking to you guys. So I miss it a lot. But today, I'm not here to tell you about very specific cyber opportunities. If you do want that, there's lots of great people in DIT in Singapore. I can point you in the direction of April and Elsie, no problems in DIT here, as well as obviously the Chambers of Commerce, who are doing such an excellent webinar today. But today I want to talk to you about my specific role, which is around international kind of cyber diplomacy and how that is shaping some of the kind of the opportunities in the medium to long term across ASEAN, and some of the wider kind of strands that are really kind of important to think about as you look at this region, indeed as you look across the world, because many of the things I'm going to talk about impact just ASEAN, just they impact Europe, just they impact the wider world. I think I want to start off with, to understand Singapore, you very much, just as Christabel was saying earlier, you have to kind of slightly understand the context of ASEAN. Singapore is one of 10 countries in the region, and there are very differing levels of cyber maturity, economic development. And I always like this slide. I apologize if some of the figures are a few years old, but it does kind of show some of the differences. You look at Singapore with a greater kind of digital adoption index to the United Kingdom. I'm pretty sure they're beating us in internet access as well at the moment, as I said a few years ago. But then you look at other countries in the region, such as Myanmar, which at that point had exceptionally low internet access and engagement. And ASEAN is a very is an interesting region. It's linked as kind of the gateway between the West and China, which is really interesting kind of philosophy to talk about. But essentially, they're in very different places across where they are in the economic development journey. 8 of them are currently over eligible and are looking at development. Well, of course, Singapore and Brunei, because of their oil reserves, have above that level, and so not over eligible. What's interesting about this? Well, first of all, ASEAN, despite all these differences, very much sees themselves as a region. And Singapore very much sees a responsibility to engage, help, support the development of cyber and security and digital economy across the region, and see themselves as examples, because they are the shining beacon, the lighthouse to shine the way and show how good how to implement the digital economy and good cyber security practices. Secondly, I would say while all these countries are in slightly different levels, they see it as exceptionally important that the digital economy is one of their ways that they're going to continue to drive economic growth, development, and drive for that kind of welfare for their citizens across the region. It's one of their primary priorities. And at times, particularly places like Myanmar and Laos, with very kind of limited things, they're really important kind of priorities to get 5G into country, to get this critical technology, to get business, digital businesses up and running, to get government digital services up and running. It's a really big focus, and that's a huge drive. This is a useful slide, again, a few years ago, about the importance of kind of digital development and how that can support economic growth. I think notably, the 3rd biggest country with the most users offline, Indonesia, again, this was a few years ago, but 230 million. And currently lots of work's ongoing at the moment around internet access, the Palapa Ring network. But again, I would indicate just how adoption, and harking back to what Christabel was saying, Jakarta is one of the Twitter kind of capitals of Asia, but they have so many of their population still getting access to internet and high-speed internet in particular. And that's going to be a trend that's going to carry on and fundamentally transform what ASEAN is going to look like and develop. Singapore, very developed, but these other nations will be rapidly trying to catch up as fast as they can because they see the benefits and they really want to draw that high-tech audience, those high-tech markets into their countries. Very, very quickly, why is digitalization important? Well, we kind of covered many of these areas. It improves government digital services, it improves economic growth, improves critical national infrastructure development, security of the nation, data management. I'm not going to dwell on these too much. Hopefully many of you being in cybersecurity businesses really do understand the importance of digitalization. What I always say is digital and cyberspace is an enabling factor. It amplifies traditional kind of functions. You give a speech to a room packed full of people, that's as far as it goes. But if I give a speech on a webinar, it can go to thousands and millions. And that's kind of where they see that ability to enable greater outreach and greater effectiveness and efficiency of government services. But, and again, very much as Christabel said, digitalization also amplifies some of the challenges and brings new challenges along. And this is kind of where my job comes in around the cyber diplomacy. We've talked a lot, obviously this seminar today's talked about cybersecurity, but many different aspects start bringing in and how we deal with the impacts of digitalization. Cybersecurity is about protecting your critical national infrastructure. You're putting all your eggs in the digital basket. How do you make sure that they are protected and your citizens can live and maintain their quality of life? We talk about big data and analytics. How do we collect data on citizens? How do we ensure that data is not used to manipulate patterns of behavior? Misinformation, online harm. Online is great, we can access lots of information, but sometimes that information might not be desirable for the government to access. Online, I don't know, child harm images, etc. like that. And that's quite dangerous, and we have to work out a way to deal with this. Culture shifts, the ability to surveil. All of these digitalization brings. And because cyberspace pretty much doesn't know boundaries, it goes across things, and activity that can happen in one country can fundamentally affect another. It's a very big international issue. And it's something just the UK is dealing with, so is Singapore, so is the whole of ASEAN, so is the whole world. And where my job comes in is the very complex nature, is that while everyone recognizes these challenges, there are lots of questions on how we deal with them and how we move forward and engage. And my job in particular is to ensure and engage with all the countries across ASEAN, including Singapore, and there's a very good reason I'm based in Singapore, to work with these countries and to help build up capabilities and capacities to really drive and make sure we get some really lasting solutions to these challenges. This is just an example to show just how complicated cyber diplomacy can be. I'm not going to dwell on that too much, but just to flag that all these issues, there's lots of forums, lots of development issues. Why is this important? Because the decisions made in these groups will fundamentally affect how nations implement the solutions to these challenges. And this is when we talk about how ASEAN is dealing with cybersecurity, how they are dealing with protecting the critical national infrastructure, that is going to feed down into regulations. That is going to feed down into specifications for systems. That is going to feed down into how they try and attract talent. They're focused on cybersecurity capabilities. And in much of this, which is why we're talking about today, Singapore very much is that shining light, that beacon across ASEAN moving forward. So very quickly, on cybersecurity, the big conversation at the moment, currently there's big conversations are happening right at this time in the UN, in First Committee, is around how do we protect the nation state from cyber security attacks. I can't go through the whole debate now. It would take me a few hours. But very briefly, this has been a conversation that's been happening for the last 2 decades and so. Currently, and there are debates on how we move forward. But essentially, the majority of the world kind of agrees with certain principles about cyber capacity and kind of confidence building measures. But then there are some divisions about whether international law applies or whether we need a new kind of treaty or legal framework to deal with cybersecurity issues in the wider space. I could go on for a long time. Please ask me questions. It's a very interesting topic. How does this matter to ASEAN and Singapore? Singapore, as I said, cares. They see this digitalization journey happening across ASEAN. And to them, it's very important that just as ASEAN builds up its digital capabilities, it's very important they build up cybersecurity capabilities as well. So Singapore is very much seen as the leader in ASEAN across in helping support capacity building and regional confidence building measures. And as part of that, and you can look this up online about the UN norms of responsible state behavior, they are trying to demonstrate and support countries develop roadmaps to show that they are really considering all these key issues that matter. How are they protecting their critical infrastructure? How are they implementing standards, internationally recognized standards? Have they got viable national certs capability? Do those certs have the capability to manage these blossoming financial services sectors and business and government digital services? How do we stop cybercrime? All this means, and all this will trickle down into regulations and laws, just as Christabel was talking about earlier. And in turn, will then trickle down into specifications and information and further kind of desire and requirements for cybersecurity capabilities across ASEAN. So in the short term and medium term, you're probably not going to see too much, but you'll see more and more cybersecurity requirements and capacity built around very common, hopefully quite common goals that ASEAN are looking to try and implement through common and regional kind of roadmaps. And that's a really important kind of image to see move forward. I can talk a long time, but I'm aware I've got very limited time. I'm waiting for Magda to give me a kind of a warning. Cybersecurity is only one aspect of kind of this digital debate, and there's lots of other stuff that's happening. Again, Singapore have lots of interest in this. And engaging. But it's also important to note that sometimes their views can differ from what happens in Europe. There's a lot of information, so I can talk a bit about online content, which is around online harm, fake news, engagement. I don't know if there's any social media companies here or people interested in how we manage that. We can talk about cybercrime. Again, this is non-stop hostile state actors. How do we manage that? How do we protect all the businesses? Data and localization, internet governance. But I think the one thing I'm really interested in, I'll just briefly touch on for 1 minute before Magda kicks me off, is around kind of some of the discussions ongoing about critical technology and supply chains. Singapore, like as we said earlier, very much sees Singapore and ASEAN as kind of the gateway between China and America. And there's some really interesting articles about economic dependence, about trade flows between the US and China and how that interacts. And it's a really big thing that we know Singapore are looking at very focusedly, as is the whole of ASEAN, about what's going on about critical technology and how supply chains interact. And in ways, there are very big opportunities for the region, as certain big companies look to move supply chains out of China and America to try and manage these uncertainties and tensions. But there are also concerns because the region is so dependent on this wider debate and trade between both kind of sides of the argument. They're very eager to ensure, and particularly Singapore, that political bifurcation, which is when kind of systems split off into two, does not move into technical bifurcation, where there's differing standards for different sides of the house. So you'll also see a lot of work happening. Singapore is doing a lot of great work on technical standards, particularly around cybersecurity and critical technology, as well as some great work they're doing on research as well. All in all, I think it's a great time. I think that Singapore is a very good region, and there's lots of things we can discuss later. The one thing, if you are really interested in cybersecurity in Singapore, that I would recommend, Singapore International Cyber Week, which happened a month ago, Singapore launched is Singapore Cybersecurity Master Plan, which is the overarching plan and how it's planning to launch and deliver cybersecurity within Singapore, as well as give some indications of kind of their outlook that they're trying to promote across ASEAN. A good example is in IoT cybersecurity standards and client marks. I thoroughly encourage you guys to take a look at that. But also, there's lots of experts here and take advantage of all their knowledge as we obviously go through this, this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Henry. That was very interesting to understand a little bit further the regulatory landscape in Asia and comparing it with as well the European aspect. I think we have seen now the environmental like ecosystem that Singapore is offering, and then we migrated to a little bit understanding the regulatory landscape. So now, following those two really interesting presentations, we will go to our friend Linda, and Linda will share with us a little bit further about the startup ecosystem, which actually is very vibrant in Singapore. And I have been personally part of I-71, and I can share only positive memories and experiences. So Linda, over to you. Please share with us today, what is I-71 and how this ecosystem is growing in Singapore and perhaps beyond. Over to you.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Magda. Hello, everyone. As Magda said, I'm Linda Nguyen Schindler. I'm program head of I-71 here in Singapore. So in Singapore, we love the acronyms, right? So I-71 stands for Innovation Cybersecurity Ecosystem at Block 71. Now, if you haven't been to Singapore, you're not familiar with the startup ecosystem. Block 71 is the hub of startup activity in Singapore. I think The Economist called it one of the most tightly packed places for startups in the world. And so if you come here, you know, imagine you have this old, you know, building that's like, you know, started off as a place that offered cheap rent for the startups. And then from there, all the startups started to, you know, congregate, which then brought investors. You have universities across the road, and you have corporates. So it's a really vibrant center. And even downstairs, you see a food incubator, you know, it's these shipping containers, and there's all sorts of food trucks. And so you really get into that vibe of you know, innovation and vibrancy there. So I-71 is a public-private initiative, and you know, and that works out really well. So our founders are Singtel Innovate, which is the venture capital arm of the telco Singtel. And the other founder is the National University of Singapore, NUS Enterprise, which is the entrepreneurial arm of the university. And then we're also supported by the government agencies, Christopher mentioned earlier, that are really important for the cybersecurity ecosystem here. That's IMDA and the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore. So with all of our partners, we're able to build up the ecosystem. I-71 has been in existence for 2 years, and I'll show you a little bit later about how we've grown in the last 2 years. So let me start with my slide. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about the startup angle. You know, what are the micro and macro scenarios here and the opportunities available for businesses in cybersecurity? So first, building a cybersecurity business in Singapore. Why do our startups feel like this is the place for them? Well, first, as you've heard earlier, Singapore is a gateway to the Southeast Asian market, right? It's the region's financial hub. We really believe that cybersecurity is the horizontal that cuts across all verticals and especially with the Smart Nation initiatives here, the digital economies that have, become quickly, rapidly becoming the norm now, especially with COVID, that these things are becoming increasingly important in making cybersecurity right in the forefront of what's needed. So what do we see here? Our startups really like the fact that there are a lot of regional corporates here, right? So Christopher mentioned earlier, Singapore is the headquarters to many APAC companies, the APAC headquarters for many companies, including like Palo Alto Networks, for example. It has more than 4,200 global businesses that have set up regional businesses here. So that's really important for our startups. They want to have end users to sell to, demand drivers that are showing them, what solutions are needed, right? Singapore is also home to many regional events. Henry just spoke about the Singapore International Cybersecurity Week, which has become one of the premier events globally for cybersecurity. But Singapore is now also home to Black Hat Asia, RSA APJ, and that GovWare conference. And so you have so many events here where you can connect with end users, connect with potential mentors, connect with potential partners. And also Singapore is ranked first in APAC and 6th worldwide in the UN Global Cybersecurity Index, which measures the level of cybersecurity commitment of countries. Right. And so Singapore is really there in the cutting edge of driving forward these cybersecurity initiatives, as we've heard earlier, like the Safer Cyberspace Master Plan that was just published by CSA, which emphasized the role of cybersecurity as a critical enabler of the smart nation. And it aims to raise the general level of cybersecurity in Singapore for individual users, communities, enterprises, and organizations. The government here is very supportive. They come out with also new initiatives like the Internet Cyber Hygiene Portal, which is a free platform for businesses to conduct cyber health screenings for free. And they just came out with a cybersecurity labeling scheme to help customers make informed decisions when they're purchasing network connected smart devices. And so all of these things, right, they create an environment of trust, stability, and really a strong foundation for the cybersecurity startups and any startups to come here and scale and grow. Then we look at the broader, right, macro, Southeast Asia. What do we see? The Southeast Asian economies are also up and coming. The region is set to become the equivalent of the world's 4th largest economy by 2030, right? So there are a lot of opportunities for cybersecurity companies within Southeast Asia. So, I mean, one of the stats that I always see is that the APAC region scored 56 out of 100 in terms of, cyber preparedness. So this signals that there's a significant room for growth and room for improvement, which signals to our startups, that there's room for their solutions, and there's room for our startups to provide more bespoke solutions, especially in this environment where everything you need a solution more customized to what you're doing, but you don't want to pay the larger the price tag, but you're able to work with a more agile company than the startups are who you want to work with. So how does this link back to the UK? How to you guys in the audience, right? So we see this as a demand and supply issue. The UK is a recognized cyber power, right? It's the 3rd on the National Cyber Power Index and a leader in the field. So while Southeast Asia is rapidly expanding its digital landscape, it also needs the cybersecurity capabilities to continue to grow and scale. So therefore, collaboration, we believe, is the key. And because cyber risk isn't constrained by geographical boundaries or anything. And so we're here to connect our startups with the corporates, with government agencies in the various countries so that they can really make a difference. So what else do we see? We see that Singapore is attractive because of the talent resource. Again, you've heard this earlier. Singapore offers Asia's most well-educated and highly skilled talent pools, right? You have an abundance of students in the institutes of higher learning now, and the intake for Infocom courses and for courses like these have tripled over the last 5 to 6 years. So we see this demand, we need the supply, And Singapore is known for its highly skilled and highly talented workforce. And again, I mean, I think one of the reasons why Singapore is attractive is because English is spoken here as one of the main languages. And so it makes the ease of business, of doing business easier, and easier to land here and then launch into the region. I think, you know, Natalie Black, who's, you know, Her Majesty's Trade Commissioner here for the region, I think she always says this, right? Singapore is the landing pad as well as the launch pad into the region. And we believe that too. Singapore only has about, you know, just over 5 million people here. So I think what we're really looking for when startups come here is a place to build their foundation, a place that they trust, a place that has the government support to really enable them to then further grow into the region. So we've definitely seen a lot of that. Okay, what else? I think the last element really is that strong support for innovation. Singapore is well known for its access to its grants, right? We have CSA, who has their call for innovation, where they offer winners receive funding support of up to $1 million for up to 24 months. And so they help work with the corporates and the government agencies to develop solutions for potential commercial application. There's so many others, like the MAS has the Cybersecurity Capability Grant here. And so we do actually have some of our startups were able to apply to, for this grant, to work with banks and come up with a solution and co-create together. As well as you even see it in the early stages, right? They have the venture building program, like for example, at the National University of Singapore, where first-time entrepreneurs can come in and learn how to be an entrepreneur in a 3-month program. And not only is it sponsored and it's free, but they'll actually pay you a stipend of $1,500 a month to learn how to be an entrepreneur. So as you can see, the environment here is just very supportive for entrepreneurial activities, and so that makes it very attractive. Also, there's an advanced ICT infrastructure here, right? We see that Singapore ranks first in the Asian Digital Transformation Index. So in Singapore, businesses get instant access to one of the world's most technologically advanced IT infrastructures in the world. So for example, if the companies are a member of I-71, they have access to cyber range, where they can test out their solutions, and then they get residency at our space, at our cybersecurity co-working space, so that they can set up their regional operations here. So, very, very supportive. And then, along with I-71, just to tell you a little bit more about that, we're an incubator, accelerator, landing pad, and our goal is to really connect that entire spectrum of the cybersecurity ecosystem. So we'll help facilitate the pipeline, in the very early stages to help people who are aspiring cybersecurity entrepreneurs. Then we'll welcome the more mature cybersecurity startups from all around the world to apply to our program, in which not only do they get the space, as I mentioned earlier, but actually what's more important is they have access to the networks, right? So our founders, again, a big telco, a large university, the government agencies, and then their networks and their business units and their partners. So the network really is one of the most powerful benefits of joining I-71. And then of course we have I-71 community, where it kind of encapsulates and incorporates all of those elements, where we bring together the entire ecosystem. We have networking events, fireside chats, so that there are opportunities for people to connect, opportunities for the startups to get out their solutions out there, and opportunities for people to come and give back to the community. Maybe they want to be a mentor, maybe they're an investor and they're interested, or an IHL, Institute of Higher Learning, and wanting to provide more opportunities for their students. So we're really that hub that connects all those elements and provides that support for you when you land in Singapore. So you can see, like, imagine 2 years ago, we had, like this ecosystem, and, it started off, smaller. And then now we have this vibrant ecosystem that is bustling, and, we hope to continue to grow it even more. And then the last thing I'll probably end with is, what opportunities have we seen here with our startups? We've seen opportunities in AI, right? And Singapore has been very supportive, again, with initiatives. We've seen a lot of opportunities in cloud security, especially obviously with the work from home. So a lot of our startups are addressing these issues. And I've probably throw in a third one with biometrics. That's another, opportunity that we see. So really, I would say to end, do reach out to us and join I-71. If you're a cybersecurity startup looking to grow and scale in the region, if you're a corporate looking for innovative solutions, or if you're just an individual who wants to join a community of like-minded cybersecurity enthusiasts, please reach out to I-71 and we'll be happy to connect. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end during the Q&A session. Over to you, Magda.
Thank you very much, Linda. I confirm they are amazing. Really was very, very nice experience joining the I-71 community when I had the chance to, and I'm still part with my team. So they're really nice, knowledgeable, and support startups with their growth path and with what they need to do. So it's not only about, being there and being part of just, let's say, a list, is actually getting some real, very nice and practical support. Like Linda mentioned, across the network as well, around building the pipeline, making sure that the startup knows who to talk to and when to talk to. That lets us go back a little bit on the flow. So we have seen the vibrant ecosystem in Singapore and beyond the capabilities. We understood that there is a fragmented regulatory landscape. And I would actually just mention that again. Literally, Asia is one of the most fragmented regulatory landscape that I have ever seen around the world. And that means that you need definitely to have an understanding of how the maturity differs if you are trying to literally vision your business being, let's say, headquartered in Singapore, serving this region. So this is something to be mindful about. And now we understood the startup ecosystem and the support. So what about all this, intellectual property that all those companies are building in those parts of the world, and especially here in Singapore, and how that actually is important to understand as well, no matter if you are just a startup building an innovative solution, or if you are actually bigger companies trying to build a development center here, for example. Apologies, I'm not sure what's happening today. I have difficulties to pronounce certain words. So, and that's where we are going to Christabel, co-regional IP business and trade advisor for Southeast Asia. And Christabel, I'm looking forward to understand a little bit further about the intellectual property details for this region. Over to you.
Thank you, Magda. Can I confirm that you're able? Let me try to.
No, we were seeing the presentation and now we are not seeing it anymore.
Sorry about that. Let me try that quickly. Yes?
Yes.
Great. Right. Thank you, Magda. Hello, and thank you for taking time to join us for today's session. Our thanks also to British Chamber of Commerce in Singapore for hosting today's session. In the next 10 minutes, I know there is a discussion going on later. Besides learning more about IPO and the resources available to UK companies, we will be covering the essentials of intellectual property, IP in short, and hopefully we'll be in touch beyond this session today. In addition to Nicole's introduction at the beginning of the session, I would like to add that I joined the UK Intellectual Property Office in 2013, and I'm based together with Henry at the British High Commission in Singapore, while IPO is based in Wales. Some of you may be aware of that already. My main primary role is to advise British companies on IP matters in the region. Very quickly, what does IPO do? Some of you may be aware that IPO is an executive agency within the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, BASE in short. It is both rights fronting and policy-making agency. We also proactively focus on IP education and outreach, a session like this, as well as supporting IP enforcement in the UK. We have over 1,400 staff in Newport and a smaller office in London, including 7 IP attaches like myself located outside the UK, covering various markets and regions. We are based in Beijing, New Delhi, Geneva, Sao Paulo, Washington, and Singapore. I would like to cover the agenda, and these are the 3 areas. First, I will cover what is IP in brief, what are the main types of IP and the importance of intellectual property for business. Very quickly in one slide, I'm going to sum up what IP. It comes in many forms, and the many forms of IP is around us. It is in the products we use, in the business you own. That includes your trading logo, your company website, your business know-how, and many more. And these are proprietary to your company. So trademarks, for example, is a brand identity, and the logos that are on your business card, those are trademarks. Patents for inventions, which I'll talk a bit about the Singapore and the regional initiative regarding patent applications, including cybersecurity as an emerging technology. Designs for the way object looks, domain names, as I've mentioned, for your website, copyright for written and artistic works, including source code, and others, including confidential information, trade secrets, technical expertise, sector knowledge, and others. One of the key takeaways today is to know what are the different forms of IP, so you can identify your intellectual property within your business. So to give a very quick example, your UK or home trademark, patent, and design registration will not protect you in an overseas market. There is no such thing as international copyright, international trademark, international patent, or international design that will automatically protect your rights throughout the entire world. There's no such thing, but protection against unauthorized use in a particular country depends on the national laws of that country. So each jurisdiction is different. However, most countries do offer copyright protection to foreign works under international agreements. And this happens only if the country is a member of the signatory. Patents and design are generally granted on a first to file. So if you are first to file, you have that limited time that is exclusively yours. And similarly for trademarks that are generally granted on first to file or first to use, depending on the country. So you should consider how to obtain respective protection before introducing your products and services to overseas market. IP and beyond, I think this slide is tailor-made for this session in particular. So I've mentioned about IP, and I've also mentioned about any new, not as new initiative, it happened last year. So Singapore IP Office, IPOS, together with 8 other ASEAN IP Office, launched a new initiative to expedite Industry 4.0 patent applications in August last year. Now, this is a pilot project. It is 2 years. Businesses and innovators who are in this space, emerging technology, including cybersecurity, will enjoy a shorter turnaround time for your patent application. So I'm not going to dive into this. If you're interested, get in touch with BritCham. We can be linked up and we can follow up after today's session on how the initiative works for you. We often suggest to business owners to consider protecting their valuable IP using cybersecurity solutions, since it is more susceptible to cyber attacks that we have heard from Christabel, from Henry as well today. Now, looking beyond IP, there are wider regulatory works that will affect how you operate in each market. Each market have got their own rules of engagement. We have seen question on PDPA in Singapore from Ashish, and as well as Magda's reply earlier in Q&A box. Each country has its own set of privacy, data protection, cybersecurity laws, and other related regulations. So that adds on to your list of know before you go in the cybersecurity sector. The second area I would like to cover is Southeast Asia in brief, IPO support and resources available to UK companies. Now, before I go into the details of it, a very broad overview about the region. Southeast Asia, if you do not already know, is an interestingly diverse region with high potential business opportunities, but legally fragmented. We've got Singapore on one end in terms of ease of doing business. We've got Myanmar opening up as well. These numbers make sense during the pre-pandemic days, but it's illustrated here to allow you to appreciate the potential of the region where ASEAN as a regional trading bloc makes a comeback. In terms of the tools and support that are available for you, we support British companies to resolve IP issues worth £100 million annually. We started the network in 2012 through one-to-one direct support by emails, via calls, just to help you through the issues you are facing, the questions that you have, including business outreach. The network has reached more than 30,000 business wanting to operate overseas. In Southeast Asia alone, we support at an average about 1,000 British companies from micro SMEs to MNCs on matters related to IP every year. We offer UK businesses free and impartial IP advice. While we are not lawyers, we have member law firms from across the chambers, British chambers in the region. While IPO is unable to advise you on legal matters, we will be able to link you up to valuable contacts who are able to help you navigate some of your IP-related risk in the region. Take us as a sounding board to partner with you in your journey, in your ambition in the region. This is a practical aspects of the support system that we have as a soft landing. So do reach out to us, take advantage of the free resources in the following slides to point you to both materials and access to expertise in local markets. Now in the next 4 slides, they are full of links, but this will be made available to you. You will find a list of resources that will help you understand what to look for so that you can navigate the risk of expansion that can cause millions of pounds of loss when trading not carefully in the region. There are success cases of business ventures to the region where they make a conscious effort to manage what is proprietary to the company. So here we've got briefs and guides, fact sheets that are available for you to self-help for a start. Undertake IP awareness. I think a session like this happens outside the UK, but within the UK, IPO has got roadshows and webinars, mission briefings as well. 3, I think many of you are beginning to do that. Reach out to chambers. BritCham is one good landing spot for you to be connected because they have got a wealth of network and knowledge about the local system. DIT, Department of International Trade. I think Henry mentioned earlier that we've got colleagues, LC, April, who are at hand, who knows your sector well to guide you along, as well as the UK ASEAN Business Council. 4 and 5, I would think that once you have gone through the initial part, you're at a ready state. So that's where you engage your partners, your distributors, the suppliers that you're engaged with on how best to safeguard your IP rights. You may not have a physical office in Singapore, but you have to work closely with your partners to manage your IP. Realize the importance. Include IP as part of business strategy. Include IP as part of your market entry plan because there'll be registrations that are required. And finally, on the 5th point is really to share with you some of the regional IP platforms that are available. They are free. One platform, imagine Google, where it crossed through the 9-10 IP officers database. So that includes trademark and design patterns. So if you've got any interest in that, key in the keywords, and you'll be able to find out whether somebody is already in that space and whether it's still valid, whether it has lapsed, etc. So this is the initiative, this set of initiative, trademark view, design view, patent scope. Take time to explore these platforms as mentioned. The links are here, and if you need a PDF version of it, reach out to Nicole, Safrin, or myself after the session. Try running. I think for a good start, every one of you would have a trade name. Every one of you would have a logo. So try running a trademark exercise for your company by typing in your trade name and see what the results are. Have someone used the similar trade name in the same service that you're providing? Which country is that? So study the results and reach out to us if you need help. This is the last set of tools that the IPO has built together. Is a business tool. It's online training tool designed to help businesses. They are free, and once registered, you have access to the business focused resources. So do share this with your internal team. And finally, one last slide is to cover some takeaways for you. While you manage your IP, I think it's also important how you do not infringe on others. This is my final slide for you to take away. After all is said and done, there is a need for a multifaceted approach. You will need a sound IP management and filing strategy in Southeast Asia, as well as understanding the rules of engagement and sector compliance regulations that may affect how you operate, such as local cybersecurity laws and data protection rules. You will also need a proper licensing contract. Who owns it? What is the business model? What data are you sharing? What rights are you giving away? Which fields of use? Which territory? Is it exclusive, non-exclusive? Is there a right to sub-license for your partner? How long is the contract valid for? So these are all encompassed in your licensing contract. On technical publications, some strategies industry players do is precluding others from patenting the same technique by publishing the enabled data management techniques in publications. Managing trade secrets and confidential information, if it cannot be reverse engineered, the tactic will require implementation of appropriate company policy and employee agreement language. So consider how to protect your source code as well. Is there anything else you can do beyond copyright? Register your trademarks early. You must continue to monitor the market if anyone uses your mark after registration. Know your competitors and players in a market. And finally, some of you may have already gone into discussion with your potential prospective partners, but do bear in mind, consider having an NDA, which we have included a template link here, non-disclosure agreement template, which you should keep a record who you sign it with, when you sign it with. Make a good home run. There are risks involved in everyday business decision, including ensuring IP rights are protected and enforced. We are always at hand to help you with specific issues that you may wish to share with us in confidence basis. We would like to hear from you after this session, and these are our contact details of the team in Singapore. We'll also be very happy to share our contacts of other attaches in other markets if you're considering other regions. I'm only an email away. That's all from me for now. Thanks very much for your attention. Over to you, Magda.
Thank you very much, Christabel. That was very interesting. So now that we have seen the ecosystem, we understood the regulatory part, the support for startups, we also know and understand how to protect our intellectual property when we set up our business in this part of the world. So I welcome everyone back on screen on video to answer a few questions. I'm conscious of time because we overrun a little bit, so we will not have very long Q&A. But before we go and answer a few questions, I still do believe that we need perhaps to give some practical advice to everyone who is today on the webinar and understand what they should not do. Because we have given them an amazing, vision about coming to Singapore or to this region, setting a new business, and then hopefully being successful. So I would like every one of you with your experience, tell us what not to do when you come in this part of the world to ensure that success and what you have seen as the biggest mistake, perhaps. One point, and I will look forward to hear from you, what do you think would be the biggest mistake not to do? Linda, I will start with you. I'm sure you have seen a lot of them.
So many. The one I would say is don't cut and paste your go-to-market strategy.
Good. I will actually add to that. Definitely requires an adapted and customized go-to-market strategy. Know the cultures of this part of the world because it's very important. It's different here than, in the UK or in France. And doing business is different as well. And I have been in the startup world. I'm worked with the Fortune 500, Fortune 250. It's different in this part of the world. So take that in consideration. Okay, I go to the next one. Christabel, what is the biggest mistake that you have seen in this part of the world?
People get excited to enter the market. Any markets with prospective partners that come, they get excited, they share too much. So that's one, don't share too much and don't get overly excited.
Thank you, Christabel. I think it's extremely important. I have seen various companies not signing even NDAs and going into discussions where they forget to protect their ideas, their intellectual property, and all what is the most valuable for them nowadays, because we're talking about the digital, ecosystem. So thank you very much, Christabel. Fair point. Henry, over to you. What do you think is the biggest mistake not to do?
I've seen so many. Don't go in blind and make sure your elevator pitch is spot on. Perfect.
Thank you so much. Great. Fantastic feedback. I do think that elevated pitches are very important, especially for startups starting their journeys. I mean, Linda, we have seen pitches from 1 minute to 3 minutes to 5 minutes. And if you don't have that pitch perfectly prepared you will lose your, few minutes of fame. So it's definitely extremely important. Thank you, Henry. Christopher, what do you think from your perspective is the biggest mistake not to do?
Yeah, I mean, the advice I give is don't do it alone. I think there are so many partners. There's quite a wealth of ecosystem partners out there ready to mentor, ready to guide, and even on this panel itself, so many people willing to help. And of course, the EDB as well. We're ready to support. You know, we give advice for free, and we give it from a perspective of how to grow your business. So always ready to speak to interested companies.
Thank you very much, Christopher. I think it's an amazing point here. Don't do it alone, especially with a part of the word that really is based as well on strong relationship between all the partners within the ecosystem. And you have the opportunity today to have, several experts based in Singapore, based in other countries, where you can rely on to help you find out the right partners and build the right relationship. Now let's a little bit go with the questions, and we have, how many, like literally 3 minutes, right, Nicole?
I think let's crack on and see what we can churn through.
Yeah, so I think I have one question that is very interesting, is basically coming from Ray, and he's asking, do we have a baseline of the skill base or talent basically today? And I think this probably is designed to maybe Christopher, do you have any feedback on that? And do we have a visibility about the talents in Singapore around cybersecurity?
I mean, talent is obviously a very key resource for everyone in the cybersecurity space. For us, we have been committed to growing, that pool of talent within our universities, within our industry, and we're working with companies as well to grow that pie. I think if you look at it, obviously in the SOCs that we have in the country, a lot of level 1 SOC operators, we're trying to move, get more level 2, more level 3. We're giving up scholarships for PhD to look at researchers. We're working with partners on problem statements for research projects to come out. And I think that's where, as companies and as cybersecurity companies come in, we're willing to partner to grow that pool together. And I think that's the baseline of skill that we have is a pretty high level, but I think we can go further. Even the Ministry of Defense is, looking to grow and partner with industry to grow and to build new capabilities and talent in that space.
Thank you, Christopher. Just to add from my experience as well, we have seen a lot of conversion of basically people who are interested into getting into cybersecurity. And I think that's also a very interesting opportunity. Now, as part of that, there are different kind of grants that can help that. So, for example, if someone would like to come into cybersecurity, perhaps you can look at the grants that support that conversion to help your company. There are other grants that relate to basically employees over 50 that would like to get back and work within companies. And this is something as well that I have experienced, and it's very good opportunity as well for businesses. So do not hesitate to look at the different support from Singapore. Now, let me go to the next question. What are the requirements for cybersecurity startups from other countries to enter Singapore market? Linda, I guess that's, a question for you. What do you think? Do we have requirements to come to Singapore?
Singapore is very welcoming. As you can see, it facilitates an environment, right? You have so much support here. You can reach out to EDB. You can reach out to BritCham. Like, there's so many ways for you to enter the market here. But I think what I will say is, if you're a startup looking to sell into the government here, in the Singaporean government, I would definitely look into the IMDA accreditation program. Because once startups get accredited, then they can sell more easily into the government agencies. And another thing I'd probably take note of is, many of the grants that I mentioned, they do require a certain percentage of Singaporean shareholding to be able to get some of the grants. So just be mindful of that. But yes, there are a lot of opportunities here. And and if you're a startup looking to enter Singapore, reach out to I-71.
Thank you very much, Linda. So we are running out of time, so I need to thank everyone for your insight. It was really amazing to see how to build and start a business in this part of the world from different perspective, like we said at the beginning. And I think that's what makes this webinar really different from many, many cybersecurity webinars out there. So again, thank you very much for attending, and thank you for sharing your very great insights, everyone. And I will pass now to Nicole for the closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Magda. Absolutely brilliant webinar. It's so insightful. And I think the amount of detail that all of our speakers have been able to provide is absolutely golden. Now, this webinar will be available online via the BritCham website. I think I put that in the comments. Give us a week, perhaps, to do a little editing, but that will be there for you to view at any point. Now, in addition to that as well, I'm going to jump in and just give a bit of my feedback, actually, because I head up the trade services team at the Chamber. And one of the biggest mistakes, for want of a better word, that I observe is actually a collaboration of all the points, which is do your due diligence and take your time, which I guess within the realms of that is to utilize and capitalize on all the support that's available, but also don't come in here thinking that it's all there, you know, on a plate. You do need to do your due diligence, such as your IP and your competitor analysis and your USPs and your pitch, you know, get it all pinned down. I would also say that that's not unique to this sector. I would say that there's many errors made across all sectors, but that is precisely why we are here, to help you. So, in addition to saying a huge thank you to all our speakers, Christabel, Christopher, Henry, and of course, Magda and Linda, I think I said Linda, it's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for joining us, everybody on the call as well, who is spotted all over the world, the UK and Southeast Asia. Please do keep an eye out for what's going on with BritCham. We deliver regular trade webinars in collaboration with the Department for International Trade here in Singapore, and we are absolutely here to help you. So have a lovely evening. Thank you again, and take care of yourself.